Red suddenly began growling and persistently signaling to Martin. It only did that when investigating criminals, but this time, it was tracking the very guardians of justice inside the police station where it worked. An extremely strange and unbelievable event. Red left Martin confused and unsure of what was happening. Only Red knew the horrifying truth and the earth-shattering secrets hidden behind those police officers. Let's listen to the full story to uncover the secrets that were being hidden, and to find out why Red ended up with 2 broken ribs and countless injuries. In the heart of Colorado Springs Police Department, a vigilant presence moved with purpose through the hallways. Red, a 5-year-old Belgian Malinois, with russet fur that earned him his name, was more than just a canine officer. To those who worked alongside him, he was a partner, a protector, and as events would soon reveal, a silent hero whose intuition would crack open one of the largest criminal conspiracies the state had ever seen. Officer Martin Wells had worked with Red since he was a puppy. Their bond transcended the typical handler-dog relationship. Martin could read Red's subtle cues, a slight tilt of the head, a particular look in his amber eyes, signals invisible to anyone else. Which is why, when Red began exhibiting unusual behavior within the station itself, Martin took notice. It started subtly. Red would stiffen whenever certain officers walked by. A low, almost imperceptible growl would rumble in his chest when particular detectives entered the break room. These weren't the loud, authoritative barks Red used when pursuing suspects or detecting narcotics. These were quiet warnings, meant for Martin alone. "What is it, boy?" Martin would whisper when they were alone. "What are you seeing that I'm not?" At first, Martin dismissed it as typical canine behavior. Perhaps Red simply didn't like the cologne of Officer Ramirez, or the aftershave Detective Simmons wore. But as the pattern continued, Martin's instincts as both a police officer and Red's partner told him something wasn't right. Red's unusual behavior seemed particularly focused on 3 officers: Detective James Simmons, Officer Miguel Ramirez, and Sergeant Tyler Coleman. All were respected members of the force with commendable service records. The thought that they might be involved in something questionable seemed absurd. Yet Red's instincts had never been wrong before. One evening, as Martin was preparing to leave after a late shift, he noticed Red's ears perk up. The dog's gaze fixed on the station's side exit where Simmons, Ramirez, and Coleman were heading out together, unusual for a Tuesday night when most officers hurried home to their families. "Change of plans, buddy," Martin whispered, clipping Red's leash back on. "I think we need to follow up on your hunch." Martin kept a respectful distance as he trailed his colleagues across town, Red sitting alertly in the passenger seat of his unmarked vehicle. The 3 officers pulled up to Twilight Echo, a flashy nightclub on the outskirts of Colorado Springs. Not exactly a cop hangout. What began that night evolved into months of careful, unofficial surveillance. Martin documented the officers' regular visits to the club, always on evenings when they weren't scheduled to work the next day. He observed other familiar faces entering the establishment, known drug dealers the department had been trying to build cases against, suspected gang members who'd slipped through the justice system on technicalities. "This isn't just a nightclub, Red," Martin murmured one night as they watched from a distance. "Something's happening here." Martin knew he needed to tread carefully. Making accusations against fellow officers without substantial evidence could end his career. He needed more than suspicions and a dog's intuition, no matter how much he trusted Red. Then came the breakthrough. Using his police credentials, Martin managed to place a hidden camera across from the club's rear entrance. The footage revealed a pattern of activity in the early morning hours, packages changing hands, large sums of cash, and faces that matched those on the department's most wanted lists. Most disturbing of all was the clear involvement of the 3 officers Martin had been watching. They weren't just patrons, they appeared to be facilitating operations, providing protection, and worse, using their positions within the department to ensure the criminal enterprise remained undetected. With enough evidence to justify an official investigation, Martin approached Captain Eleanor Richards, a veteran officer known for her unwavering integrity. "This is explosive, Wells," she said after reviewing his findings. "If true, this isn't just about corrupt cops. This could be the hub of a major criminal network operating right under our noses." Captain Richards authorized Martin to continue his investigation, this time with official backing but under strict confidentiality. Only she and two trusted federal liaisons would know the full scope of what they were pursuing. For 3 more months Martin and Red worked tirelessly, building a case that grew more complex and far-reaching with each new piece of evidence. The nightclub wasn't just a front for local criminal activity, it was a sophisticated operation involving human trafficking, drug distribution networks that spanned multiple states, and money laundering on a scale that suggested international connections. Throughout it all, Red remained Martin's most valuable partner. The dog's acute senses detected hidden compartments in vehicles that yielded crucial evidence. His trained nose identified substances that helped map the distribution network, and his protective presence ensured Martin's safety during increasingly dangerous surveillance operations. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that this case required resources beyond what the local department could provide. Captain Richards reached out to federal authorities, and soon the DEA took the lead in coordinating what would become one of the largest joint operations in Colorado's history. The raid was planned for the early hours of a Sunday morning, when intelligence suggested a major shipment would be arriving and key players would be present. More than 300 officers from multiple agencies gathered at a staging area miles from the target location. Martin and Red were assigned to the primary entry team, a recognition of their critical role in uncovering the operation. As officers donned tactical gear and reviewed final instructions, Martin knelt beside his partner. "This is it, Red," he said quietly, running a hand through the dog's fur. "Everything we've been working toward, stay close to me in there." The raid commenced with precision at 2:17 a.m. Tactical teams surrounded the building while others secured escape routes. The element of surprise worked in their favor. Many suspects were apprehended before they could resist or flee. Inside, the scene was chaotic. Music still blared as patrons scattered and suspects attempted to dispose of evidence. Red moved with purpose through the pandemonium, leading Martin and other officers to hidden rooms where illegal activities continued unaware of the raid in progress. It was in one such back room that they encountered Simmons, Ramirez, and Coleman. The corrupt officers had been meeting with high-ranking members of a drug cartel when the raid began. Cornered and desperate, they attempted to fight their way out. Red reacted with the training and loyalty that had defined his service. As Ramirez raised his weapon toward Martin, Red launched himself forward, taking the man down and disarming him in one fluid motion. Coleman attempted to flee through a concealed exit, but Red pursued, cornering him until officers could make the arrest. The confrontation with Simmons proved most dangerous. The detective, realizing his career and freedom were over, became violent. In the struggle that ensued, he struck Red repeatedly with a metal chair, causing injuries that would later be diagnosed as 2 broken ribs and extensive soft tissue damage. Despite his injuries, Red maintained his hold on Simmons until backup arrived. Only after the detective was handcuffed and secured did the brave dog finally show signs of pain, whimpering as he limped back to Martin's side. As the dust settled, the full scope of their accomplishment became clear. The operation had resulted in 114 arrests, including 11 individuals on most wanted lists and 3 police officers whose corruption had betrayed their badges and the community's trust. Authorities seized over 200 kilograms of various narcotics, $3.7 million in cash, dozens of illegal firearms, and most importantly, freed 17 victims of human trafficking who had been held against their will. In the days that followed, the raid dominated headlines across the nation. Federal agencies held press conferences detailing the sophisticated criminal network that had been dismantled and the years of prison sentences awaiting those arrested. Conspicuously absent from these public accounts was any mention of Red's pivotal role. This was by Martin's design. He had specifically requested that his partner's involvement be kept confidential. If word gets out about how Red can identify corrupt officers or track specific individuals, Martin explained to Captain Richards, he becomes a target. These criminal organizations have long memories and far reach. I won't put him at risk for publicity. The captain agreed, ensuring that official reports credited canine assets without specifying Red by name or including his photograph in any materials released to the press. While Red recuperated at a specialized veterinary hospital under a pseudonym, Martin split his time between the ongoing investigation and visiting his injured partner. The dog's injuries, while serious, weren't life-threatening but required weeks of rest and rehabilitation. Martin would sit beside Red's bed for hours, sometimes reading case files aloud, other times simply keeping quiet company as the brave dog healed. Veterinary staff noted how Red's eyes would light up whenever Martin entered the room, his tail wagging despite the pain it clearly caused him. "You know he's healing faster than we expected," Dr. Lori Chen told Martin during one visit. "It's like he knows he has important work to get back to." As news of the raid's success spread throughout law enforcement communities, rumors began circulating about the exceptional canine officer who had helped break the case. Though Red's identity remained protected, many officers understood that some service deserved recognition, even if it had to remain unofficial. A movement began within police departments across Colorado. Officers, dispatchers, administrative staff, and their families started writing messages of support for the unnamed canine hero. These notes, ranging from simple thank you cards to elaborate drawings from officers' children, were collected and delivered to Martin for Red. Captain Richards arranged for a small private ceremony once Red was well enough to return to light duty. In the department's canine training facility, away from media or public attention, Red received a special commendation medal, the first of its kind awarded in the department's history. The medal, attached to his collar by the chief of police himself, bore no name, only the inscription, "For extraordinary service and sacrifice beyond the call of duty." Martin accepted the honor on Red's behalf with a short speech. "Red doesn't serve for recognition or rewards. He serves because that's who he is, a guardian who protects not just me, but all of us and the oath we took. His instincts and heart led us to uncover corruption that threatened everything we stand for. I'm proud to be his partner, his voice, and his friend." Though Red couldn't understand the specific words, the tone and emotion behind them registered clearly. He stood tall beside Martin, ears forward, eyes alert, the very picture of dignity and service. In the months that followed, the case expanded as investigators followed leads from the initial arrests. The corruption network proved more extensive than initially believed, with connections to similar operations in neighboring states. Red and Martin's work had pulled the first thread that would eventually unravel a tapestry of crime spanning much of the western United States. For Red, life returned to a new normal. His physical recovery progressed well, though cold weather would always cause a slight stiffness in his side where the ribs had healed. He returned to full active duty 4 months after the raid, his enthusiasm for the work undiminished by his experience. If anything, the bond between Red and Martin grew stronger. They developed an even more refined system of communication, subtle cues and signals that allowed them to work in seamless coordination. Other officers noted the almost telepathic connection between the pair, how they seemed to anticipate each other's movements and thoughts. The nightclub case, as it became known in the department, was eventually closed after the last suspect was sentenced. The building itself was seized by the government and later repurposed as a community center serving at-risk youth, a fitting transformation for a place once dedicated to exploitation and harm. Red and Martin continued their service with distinction, taking on new cases and facing new challenges. Though they received other commendations and recognitions over the years, nothing quite matched the significance of that first major case, the one that had started with nothing more than a dog's intuition and a handler's trust. On the anniversary of the raid each year, Martin would bring Red to their favorite spot in Garden of the Gods Park. There, with the majestic red rock formations rising around them and the scent of pine in the air, they would spend a quiet hour together. No training, no work, just appreciation for their partnership and the difference they had made. During one such visit, as Red lay contentedly next to him watching the sunset paint the rocks in deepening shades of crimson, Martin reflected on how much his life had changed because of the dog beside him. "You know what's funny, Red," he said, scratching behind the dog's ears. Everyone thinks I trained you, but the truth is, you've taught me so much more. You showed me what it means to trust instincts over appearances, to persist when the evidence is thin, to stay loyal to what's right even when it's difficult. Those aren't just canine skills, they're life lessons. Red responded by resting his head on Martin's knee, eyes half closed in contentment. In that moment they weren't officer and canine, or even handler and dog, they were simply two friends who had faced darkness together and emerged stronger for it. Back at the station, a small tribute to their partnership existed, though few knew its significance. In Captain Richard's office, inside a simple frame on her wall, hung a photograph of a paw print pressed into fresh cement. Below it, etched into the frame itself, were the words, "Some heroes leave prints, not footlights." For those who knew the story behind it, the message was clear. Red's legacy wasn't measured in headlines or public accolades, but in the lives he had touched and the community he had helped make safer. His heroism was of the quiet kind, steadfast, unwavering, and true. And for Red himself, such recognition would have meant little compared to what he valued most. The daily work beside his trusted partner, the satisfaction of solving mysteries through his exceptional senses, and the simple joy of doing what he was born to do, protecting others. As the years passed and Red's muzzle gradually showed flecks of gray, his legend within law enforcement circles grew. New canine handlers would sometimes hear senior officers speak in hushed tones about the case that Red broke, or Martin Wells' partner, who could smell corruption. These stories, passed down like folklore, inspired a new generation of handlers and dogs to develop the same level of intuitive partnership. The criminal organizations dismantled by the nightclub raid never fully recovered in Colorado. Their leadership removed and their operations exposed, they couldn't regain the foothold they once had. Periodic attempts to re-establish similar networks were met with enhanced vigilance from law enforcement agencies, still applying lessons learned from Red and Martin's case. Statistics would eventually show a sustained decrease in drug trafficking and related crimes throughout the region, numbers and percentages that couldn't capture the full human impact. Families spared the ravages of addiction, young people who avoided exploitation, communities freed from the shadow of organized crime. These ripple effects of one dog's persistence and one officer's trust would continue long after case files were archived. In police academies across the state, training programs incorporated new modules on detecting internal corruption, understanding nonverbal indications from canine partners, and the importance of following leads that might initially seem improbable. Though the specifics of Red's methods remained classified, the principles he and Martin had employed became standard practice. Captain Richards, eventually promoted to commissioner, would occasionally visit the canine training facility to observe new dog handler teams during their certification exercises. She would watch with knowing eyes as instructors emphasized the importance of the bond between officer and dog, how true partnership transcended training manuals and standard procedures. Remember, one veteran canine trainer would tell his students, "These dogs can perceive things we might miss." Sometimes, the most important skill you can develop is knowing when to trust your partner's instincts over your own assumptions. For Martin, these lasting impacts of their work brought a quiet satisfaction. He never sought credit or advancement based on the case, preferring to let his and Red's continued performance speak for itself. When asked by newer officers about the rumors they'd heard, he would simply smile and redirect the conversation to the importance of proper canine handling techniques or the latest developments in service dog training. Red himself remained unchanged by his unannounced fame, as focused and diligent in his duties at 10 years old as he had been in his prime. Though he would never make another case as significant as the nightclub raid, his day-to-day work continued to exemplify the highest standards of police canine service, finding missing children, detecting narcotics, apprehending dangerous suspects, and always protecting Martin. When the time eventually came for Red's retirement from active duty, the department made an exception to usual protocol. Typically, police dogs were either adopted by their handlers or placed with carefully screened families. For Red, Commissioner Richards authorized a special designation, Community Ambassador. In this new role, Red would live with Martin but continue visiting schools, community centers, and civic events as a representative of the police department. Children especially adored the dignified dog with the russet coat who would patiently allow small hands to pet him while Martin explained how police dogs helped keep communities safe. What neither the children nor their parents realized was that the gentle dog accepting their attention had once been instrumental in one of the largest criminal investigations in state history. They didn't need to know that the paw they shook had once held corrupt officers accountable, or that the warm brown eyes watching them had once spotted evidence that more human eyes had missed. For Red, these interactions were simply a new form of service, building bridges between law enforcement and the community, showing the human and canine face of policing, inspiring young people who might one day pursue careers in public safety. On Red's 12th birthday, Martin organized a small private gathering at their home. Captain Richards, now commissioner, attended, along with a few select officers who had worked closely with them over the years, and the veterinary team who had cared for Red after his injuries. As Red enjoyed a special cake made of beef and sweet potatoes crafted by Dr. Chen, who had overseen his recovery, Martin raised a toast to his partner. To Red, he said, voice thick with emotion, who taught us all that sometimes the quietest heroes make the loudest impact. Who showed me that partnership isn't about rank or species or words, it's about trust, loyalty, and heart. Who never sought recognition but deserved it more than anyone I've known. The small group applauded as Red, seemingly understanding he was being honored, sat a little straighter and gave a single dignified bark. Later that evening, after the guests had departed, Martin sat on the porch of their mountain home, with Red lying contentedly at his feet. The setting sun cast long shadows across the yard as a gentle breeze carried the scents of pine and distant rain. You know what, Red? Martin said softly, looking down at his aging partner. They say no one will ever know everything you did for this community, but I know, and somehow, I think that's exactly how you would want it. Red's tail thumped once against the wooden porch, a simple acknowledgement between friends who had seen both darkness and light together and chosen, always, to move toward the light. In police stations across Colorado, the legend of Red continued to grow, transformed by time and telling into something approaching mythology. Details changed with each retelling. Some versions claimed he could identify criminals by the sound of their heartbeats. Others suggested he had been specially trained by elite military units before joining the police force. The truth, that Red was simply an exceptional dog with exceptional intuition, paired with a handler who respected his instincts, was both simpler and more profound than the legends. It spoke to something fundamental about partnership, trust, and the quiet heroism that asks for no recognition. Years later, long after both Red and Martin had passed on, a small memorial would be erected in a secluded corner of the Colorado Springs Police Canine Training Facility. Unlike most such monuments, this one bore no name, no dates, no specific achievements, just a bronze sculpture of a Belgian Malinois sitting alertly, eyes fixed on some distant point only it could perceive. At the base of the statue, a simple inscription read, "For those who serve in silence, whose greatest strength lies not in what they say, but in what they see when others look away." New handlers bringing their young dogs for training would often pat the bronze figure for luck. Over decades, the top of the statue's head would be worn smooth by thousands of such touches, a tactile testament to a legacy that endured beyond records or recognition. And somewhere perhaps, the spirit of a russet-colored Belgian Malinois would watch with quiet satisfaction, knowing that his service had rippled outward to touch generations yet to come, proving that sometimes the greatest heroes are those whose names we never learn. Dear friends and community members, as Red continues his recovery, I've been overwhelmed by the outpouring of support from those who have heard fragments of our story through unofficial channels. Your cards, well wishes and kind words mean more than you know, both to me and to Red, who somehow seems to understand when I read your messages to him. Red's physical healing is progressing well, the 2 broken ribs are mending nicely, and his characteristic energy is gradually returning. The veterinary team expects him to make a full recovery, though they caution that patience will be essential in the coming weeks. For those who have asked how to help, your continued support through words of encouragement means everything. Red may not understand your specific messages, but he recognizes the tone of kindness when I share them with him during our visits. If you would like to leave a comment or message for Red below, I promise to read every one to him as he continues his recovery. What Red accomplished cannot be fully acknowledged publicly for reasons of ongoing investigations and his own security. But know this, the safety our community now enjoys is due in no small part to a dog who could sense what humans often miss and who served with unwavering loyalty. Red doesn't ask for recognition or rewards. His satisfaction comes from the work itself, from our partnership, and from knowing he's made a difference. In that way, perhaps all of us could learn something from his example. With deepest gratitude, Officer Martin Wells, Colorado Springs Police Department K-9 Unit.